This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. When global health, artificial intelligence, and grifting celebrity philanthropy meet, what happens to the children they claim to protect? In today's video, we'll explore how the World Health Organization's digital surveillance ambitions, the Future of Life's Institute's push for AI control, and Harry and Meghan's philanthropic so-called empire via Archwell all merge into a single architecture of influence, data, and power. Because under the feel-good branding of show up and do good lies something far more troubling. Who controls our data, our youth, and the narrative of saving the world? But before we get started, please go ahead and help the kid out and hit that like button, as well as make sure that you're still subscribed. We know what YouTube likes to do to this channel. Every little bit of support helps. Without further ado, let's get into it. We begin with the institution we're told is here to protect us, the World Health Organization, aka the WHO. Now, we know both Harry and Meghan are heavily aligned with Dr. Tedros from the World Health Organization, so keep that in the back of your mind as I go through this. Recently, the World Health Organization introduced a major expansion of its global monitoring network. The system, known as Epidemic Intelligence from Open Sources 2.0, or EIOS. This system monitors online conversations and media activity in real time. Under the banner of pandemic preparedness, it claims to track disease signals. In truth, its reach extends significantly further to social listening, tone analysis, and narrative shaping. From Reclaim the Net's article on October 19th, under the justification of protecting public health, the World Health Organization is establishing an always-on digital network that watches, classifies, and evaluates global discourse, quietly redefining what it means to manage health and information in the same breath. So what the heck does that all mean? Well, it means your social media posts, your publicly available web comments, even radio or audio sources are feeding into this global system. The system isn't just looking for quote-unquote virus outbreak, it's listening for attitudes, knowledge, beliefs, and intentions. And this type of surveillance can become very sinister because we've heard stories of how some of these tech billionaires see a future where behaviors can be predicted. So if you have AI dictating maybe somebody's behavior and being classified as likely to commit crimes before they even do anything, then that could pose a problem for their life and future, meaning access to going to places or using the internet or being able to have certain things like a house or car or being able to open a bank account. This kind of surveillance will become authoritarian if it gets into the hands of the wrong people. And we all know that the people at the WHO don't have the best intentions for the world. So now, with that being said, the system partners with governments, national monitoring systems across 110 plus countries. I don't know about you, but that doesn't feel too good that China is a part of this. And crucially, one of its components is classified as the misinformation classifier, which is an AI program that sorts media into quote-unquote fake news versus relevant discussions. So they will be the ones to say what is fake news and what is relevant that people are allowed to see. Now, on one hand, you might say, great, let's catch those man-made pandemics early. But on the other hand, this is the architecture, and let's call it what it is, for behavioral governance. If you can measure and classify discourse, you can obviously influence it, which is ultimately the goal. If you track tone and intention, you influence and drive what's acceptable. And when Harry and Meghan talk about the children, digital wellness, mental health, and those so-called safe spaces, they're targeting exactly the demographic whose behaviors are monitored, shaped, and ultimately commoditized. These people are nothing but predators, which brings me to this announcement made today on the Archibald Fugazi Public Charities website announcing their partnership with the Future of Life Institute. This, my friends, has red flags all over it. AI superintelligence must serve humanity. As it says here, Prince Harry and Meghan, Duke and Duchess of Sussex, were asked to join an unprecedented coalition of world-renowned leaders, including AI scientists, experts, policymakers, and researchers in calling for a prohibition on the development of AI superintelligence until the technology is reliably safe and controllable. Key word there, guys, controllable, and has public buy-in. This first of its kind coalition is remarkably ideologically diverse and global. Global, folks, signaling strong concern about the future of AI technology. And that's because they don't have control of it yet. And that's what's freaking them out. Which brings me back to this article, which was written up in the Financial Times, a little more serious than People magazine, which I think it's important we go through it. And you'll understand why in a second, because it comes full circle to what I've been telling you from day one. Now, I'm assuming the reason why Steve Bannon is on the cover here is to appear balanced, but when you see the rest of the people who have attended this so-called event, you'll recognize that there is the globalist agenda here. Steve Bannon, Meghan Markle, and Stephen Fry, for those that don't know in America, he's an English actor, have joined a group of public figures calling for a prohibition on the development of so-called superintelligence in an unlikely alliance against advanced artificial intelligence systems. More than 800 people, including AI scientists, politicians, celebrities, and religious leaders, have signed a statement to prevent the creation of superintelligence AI systems that are more intelligent than most humans. We call for a prohibition on the development of superintelligence, not lifted before there is broad scientific consensus that it will be done safely and controllably and strong public buy-in, the statement said. Its signatories include the godfathers of AI, Geoffrey Hinton and Joshua Bengio, former Ireland President Mary Robinson, and Prince Harry. The Future of Life Institute, a nonprofit campaign group, published the letter on Wednesday along with a poll showing 5% of Americans support the current status quo of unregulated development. Nearly 3/4 of respondents were in favor of robust regulation, according to the survey conducted by the campaign group. The Institute's president, Max Tegmark, told the Financial Times, "It's our humanity that brings us all together here. More and more people are starting to think that the biggest threat isn't the other company or even the other country, but maybe the machines we are building." Several leading big tech groups and AI startups, including OpenAI, Meta, and Google, are locked in a fierce competition to be the first to develop superintelligence, or artificial general intelligence. Both terms generally refer to AI systems that can outperform humans on most tasks. In March of 2023, 5 months after the launch of ChatGPT, tech experts, including Elon Musk, released a similar statement the FLI organized, which called for a 6-month moratorium on all AI development. However, Musk's xAI continues to build AI systems. The latest statement is narrower and absolutely not calling for a pause on AI development, Tegmark said. You don't need superintelligence for curing cancer, for self-driving cars, or to massively improve productivity and efficiency, Tegmark added. Several prominent Chinese scientists have signed the statement, including Andrew Yao and Ya Zhang, former president of Baidu. Other signatories include former government officials Susan Rice, National Security Advisor under then-President Barack Obama, and Mike Mullen, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the Obama and George Bush administrations. Now, this is important. Tegmark said, loss of control is something that is viewed as a national security threat both by the West and in China. they will be against it for their own self-interests, so they don't need to trust each other at all. Other signatories include Apple's co-founder Steve Wozniak and Virgin co-founder Richard Branson, as well as faith leaders across religions. The global regulatory landscape for AI is moving slowly, with the most advanced legislation, the EU AI Act, being rolled out in stages despite fierce criticism from industry. In the US, states including California, Utah, and Texas have enacted specific laws on AI. A proposed 10-year moratorium on AI regulation was pulled from the federal budget bill in July. Now, a couple of thoughts that I have here. Would Harry and Meghan attach their names to this list alongside Steve Bannon and Glenn Beck if Kamala Harris had been in office? Probably not. Neither would have Susan Rice or any of the other people from the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and the UK. Kamala Harris was all on board to selling the American people out by giving away our sovereignty to the United Nations and the World Health Organization. She also was in favor of following down the same path that the United Kingdom and the EU have gone down in censoring its people. So, of course, you see all these legislators from the UK being in support of slowing it down and making sure that we have policy and regulation that's in their favor. Okay, and we're now going to get into how the World Health Organization, as well as the UN, Archwell, and all of the tech companies working together to benefit and profit. This is not about slowing it down and protecting humans. No, this is about, hey, we need to get control because there's too much power to be had here. And then you add the optics of Harry and Meghan putting their name there to a list that's not so leftist to soften the image of them being involved with the Biden regime. You know what I mean? So show them, yeah, maybe they really are doing good work in this space and trying to keep kids safe. Don't fall for it. Now, it's laughable when you read how they put themselves up into the same sphere as these researchers and scientists and qualified people to be having these conversations with. Harry and Meghan have zero qualifications to be in there talking about how to reshape the digital landscape. And it's like nails on a chalkboard whenever I see Harry and Meghan use their bag of buzzwords like humanity, compassion, community, resilience. I mean, literally destroying the word democracy. Misinformation is such a humanitarian crisis that it's threatening our democracies. Like, shut up. You know, if you want to keep the online space safe, keep these two hypocrites off of it. Don't give them a platform to continue to keep lying and deceiving people. As it says at the bottom, in joining the initiative, Prince Harry said, "The future of AI should serve humanity, not replace it. The true test of progress will be not how fast we move, but how wisely we steer." Look, Harry, shut up. Just shut up. Now, you're the last person to be talking about humanity. People will not forget what you have done to your family. But anyhow, shifting over, let's talk about this new NGO called the Future of Life Institute. They're the ones who got this list together, otherwise known as FLI. Yeah, and if you notice, right on the cover of their website, they have pictures of people at the UN. According to Influence Watch, FLI describes itself as working to maximize the benefits and minimize the risks of artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and nuclear weapons, folks. Harry is involved with an organization who's focused on nuclear weapons. Okay, their core position: we are building systems of AI that could surpass human intelligence, and the risks are existential. They advocate for regulatory frameworks, global institutions, and treaties. On the surface, yeah, it's fine if you actually trust these people, be safe, but when you dig deeper, what they do is they advocate for a paused future, a slowdown. You know, and that's not necessarily bad if they were well-intentioned people, but you got to ask the question, who controls the actual slowdown and pause? Who controls the decision-making body? This is when it becomes bad. When governance becomes centralized, which is ultimately what's going on here, it tends to favor big tech and institutional actors like the World Health Organization and people like Harry and Meghan, rather than independent voices like yours and mine or the youth. And like anytime you see George Soros's Open Society Foundation being involved with these kinds of institutions, run the other way. You know that it's not good. Just to share with you in the little bit of research that I've done, there have been quite a few controversies with FLI. Some accuse FLI of prioritizing speculative long-term risks, meaning human extension, over immediate harms, like causing people to lose their jobs, bias, and taking away privacy with the surveillance that they want to implement everywhere. When we go back to the power of language, red flags when you see the language of steering humanity and existential threats. It parallels the same rhetoric you hear in surveillance state control circles. You hear it all the time. This is language Harry and Meghan have adopted, and we know Meghan is a dictator in high heels. She has no qualms harming people for her own personal gain. Overall, in short, when you look at FLI, the optics that they're portraying is positioning itself as a guardian of humanity. But what people are not really seeing is that it also occupies a vantage point of globalist technical governance. That's a powerful force. So now combine FLI's AI governance aspirations with WHO's behavioral monitoring infrastructure. You see a system or web emerging where tech, data, behavior, and health now converge under the governance and control of these elite institutions. So how do Harry and Meghan fit with their Archewell Fugazi public charity? Well, Meghan is thirsty and she sees celebrity as a gateway to power. The celebrity dimension here is important because celebrities provide the soft veneer for the hard infrastructure. And for whatever reason, these elites still think that Harry and Meghan have this cachet to draw this global audience. Yeah, they do have eyes globally, but it's not positive. So I'm struggling to understand why they continue to keep involving them when it's only putting a spotlight on they themselves now. Because everything that touches Harry and Meghan have to be scrutinized. Now, do I believe that Harry and Meghan were asked to join this unprecedented coalition? Yeah, I do, because you know whose name that we saw earlier, who has been trying to infiltrate here in the United States to push policy on a state level, is Baroness Beban Cadrone. It's laughable. What qualifications do they have to offer? The answer is nothing. It's just because Harry is a member of the royal family, and Harry has been on a mission since 2020. That involves someone from the House of Lords representing the British Crown. That is the only reason why he and his wife have a seat at that table. So when we look at these three separate entities, what do we have? Well, we have the surveillance infrastructure, which is the WHO EIOS that monitors behavior, online discourse, and youth narrative. Then we have an AI governance think tank called the FLI that calls for institutional governance over transformative tech. And finally, we have this celebrity, philanthropy, brand, whatever you call it, Archewell Fugazi public charity that uses youth, digital well-being, and global health safety themes to curate their perceived so-called influence. At the end of the day, we know that these people aren't doing this out of the kindness of their heart and for free. Let's think through how this triangulates into power and profit. Harry and Meghan's so-called brand builds up by aligning with organizations like FLI and global health narratives, reinforcing their so-called image as the global humanitarian couple. We all know it's a facade, but if we step out of the echo chamber, there are still many people who do not know or understand how evil these people are and what they've been doing. There are still a lot of people who are distracted by the drama and nonsense being put out there intentionally to keep the public distracted. Many people think Harry's sitting at home doing nothing but looking at social media and getting high. Maybe he's still getting high, but he's definitely not home and he's definitely involved in things that we're not talking about. When we look at what Archewell is trying to do for this so-called public charity, It's really just setting up their image to open the doors for other opportunities like speaking fees, media deals, brand partnerships, venture funding in so called digital wellness, and of course, the youth empowerment. As much as we see them as a disaster, they're still being given a platform to speak, and they're still being given opportunities. Ask yourself why. If they're really such a disaster, why are they continuing to be shoved down our faces? If you've been following me and paying attention, then you know. You know what this is. Meanwhile, while everybody is distracted, the groundwork to put this surveillance system in reinforces the narratives of youth are vulnerable, tech is dangerous, and we need guardians, or what Megan likes to call guardrails. Those guardians happen to be the same institutions and celebrity predators fronting these programs. I mean, need I say any more? Data about your children's behavior, online risks, digital wellness, all becomes profit to these fraudulent NGOs. It becomes profit to these tech platforms, and it becomes profit to monitoring infrastructures that the UN, World Economic Forum, and WHO want in their centralized power grab to erode sovereignty and freedom. This is ultimately the goal, the one world government. Now, as I said before, it's not really about the children. This is just an excuse. Let's go ahead and connect some of these dots, right? When we look at the youth interventions that is pitched by Archewell Fugazi Public Charity, when they say, we support undeserved girls in digital spaces, or they protect children online and advocate for responsible tech. Yeah, some of those are, noble causes, but certainly not by the untrustworthy people who founded Archewell. This global framework and architecture around them begs serious questions. Like what annoys me about these people is why do they think they should be anointed the ones to define the problem? You see, the World Health Organization's EIOS system defines threats not just by pathogens, but by attitudes, beliefs, intentions. That means kids who talk online, post, dissent, are they potentially threats unless guided? You look at FLI, they define the problem as runaway AI, existential risks, which requires now global governance, high tech, and institutional control. And then you see Archewell jumping in there, defining the problem as digital wellness, like they're not doctors, online safety, and offers the solution riding off of other organizations they leech themselves onto for credibility. Like none of these people can be taken seriously because of the harm that they have caused. At a high level, what this is really all about is controlling the narrative and giving back that power to the institutions, not allowing the narrative to be controlled in the communities themselves. That's why they hate social media so much, and voices like mine. It goes back to what I've stated about this censorship complex and what it was really all about. You see, those demons lost control over information when social media popped off, and they realized they can't control it in the way that they did when media was allowed only for a certain few. It's like the royal rota. They are heavily controlled by the royal family and what they can say about them. That's not a secret. What I've learned is that these aristocrats hate independent voices and they can't control it, like mine. There is no free speech or free thought in their world. They want you to think you have this freedom, but it is guided by their influence to their desired behavior outcome, such as like the elections. When Donald Trump won the election in 2016, the deep state said never again. And this is all documented. So for those that are going to come at me and say it's conspiracy, go to the government website and read it for yourself. Look at what ended up happening in 2020. We saw the global effort to censor voices. After that worked and Biden was put in, more countries followed suit like Brazil, France, Romania, the EU, and the UK. I kept telling you, all of this ties back to Donald Trump and throwing a wrench into the globalist destruction of the West with this stupid Agenda 2030 and New World Order. An order no one voted for, but being forced into. So now the globalists are pissed and working extra hard to get control of AI because they know whoever controls the algorithm and data will control the information and people. The sad part is that there are still so many people who continue to deny this is happening, and with the royal family's involvement. So, who stands to benefit? Well, institutions like the World Health Organization and FLI, they gain authority, they expand their surveillance and governance mandates, and they flush the budgets. The more attachment Archwell has to these so-called coalitions, they gain global relevance, which opens up more opportunities to exploit the vulnerable and profit. It opens access to more elite networks, and ultimately for Meghan, it's sponsorship for political power, because we all know she's going to go absolutely mad when the day comes for Catherine to be crowned queen, So you bet your bottom dollar she is hustling to figure out where she can grab that power. The opportunity for the tech companies, they get to develop the monitoring systems, the AI tools, the platforms that plug into digital wellness and youth safety, while harvesting all that data that can be used to profit and control minds. But what's in it for the kids? Well, they get programs, but do they get any kind of agency? Do they get independent, grassroots-owned solutions? No. It's very rare that's going to happen. And I think the final important question we have to ask is, what are the harms? Now, for starters, if you look at this, data extraction, children's online behaviors are going to be tracked under wellness programs. The surveillance apparatus justifies more monitoring. Then you have behavioral shaping. When you define what safe digital behavior is and monitor it, you shape what children can say or think. Dissent might get classified as misinformation or harm, and we're seeing the UK start crossing that line.
This is the most insane story I have seen all week. A Reform UK councillor has been reported to the police after comments made on an STV interview about anti-migrant protests in Falkirk. Have a look.
True unrest, and it's scary. It's scary as a local resident, somebody who's born and bred here. I shouldn't have said that.
Well, do you see why this is people sometimes think that Reform are very much against having people here?
It just came out.
That's unfortunate for you.
And then we have this dependence loop. This narrative of vulnerability means children become objects of intervention, not subjects of empowerment. Their autonomy is definitely reduced. And then you've got the brand-driven philanthropy. When a celebrity brand, like Archwell, that's involved, programs tend to be packaged, media-friendly, and tied to marketable data. You see, the kids become part of the brand story, as we see what's happening with Archwell. We see this being pushed as Meghan's brand to try and rehabilitate her irreparable reputation. And then you have the concentration of power. These same institutions that build the surveillance infrastructure are those that are defining the so-called solution. The brand actors like Harry and Meghan serve as the face, and the tech providers sell their tools. And what you end up with is a top-down model, not a bottom-up one, which is what people like Jory Craig and Renee DiResta, former CIA, wants to see happen. Remember, DiResta has talked about this top-down approach several times in interviews. Perfect example of Tony Blair and his institute advising the Labour government on digital IDs. So in theory, humanity is being helped in one sense, but we're also being enrolled into a model of control. The very infrastructure meant to protect children and protect people and keeping them safe now also monitors them. The very programs meant to empower also define acceptable behavior. It's all where it's heading, and so many people are asleep at the wheel. But let's zoom out even further. What we're witnessing isn't isolated programs. It's part of a globalist architecture, institutions, as I've said before, platforms, and also those to influence, all aligning to shape how humans, particularly young humans, interact with technology, data, health, and each other. You see, power, they want it to flow upward, from the children through programs into data streams into institutional control. Influence now is centralized, and the people making the rules are the people being paid, the people being seen, and the people benefiting at the end of the day, which is why Harry and Meghan are all over this. Time and time again, Harry and Meghan have proved themselves to be opportunists, and the people that they associate themselves with are of the same filth and selfish greed. You can't trust them. Now, I don't want you to think that Harry and Meghan are the masterminds behind this. No, their role is very small, but very important. They act as the connective tissue between elite institutions and public global visibility. That's all they're doing here. And it's because they have eyes around the world, unfortunately, because of their royal association. Nothing more. They know they're nothing without it. And, it's why Meghan is so desperate to cling on for dear life in order for her to stay relevant. They bring the story, the face, the narrative, and the goal is to normalize and legitimize the surveillance governance model. And this is where we're heading. And it's why it's so important to talk about them. As much as we hate it and wish they would stop meddling and go away, we can't stay silent because it's clear they're pushing forward to drive policy and regulations that affect each and every one of us, especially in America. So for the people who are still asleep at the wheel and continue to see this couple as non-entities, as well as saying that we're giving them too much credit, snap out of it. Because they suckered you and have been grifting off of your money, while at the same time undermining all of our freedoms with the work that they have been doing quietly. I mean, it's not normal to have drama after drama after drama. At what point are you going to say that it's purposely being done to distract all of us to keep us dumb and stupid? Yeah, I don't need to beat a dead horse. I think you all know what's going on here. So the next time you hear words like digital wellness for youth or global health security, AI must serve humanity, think to yourself, who defines what wellness means and who monitors your child's data? Who profits from those programs and who sits at the top of this architecture? Harry and Meghan might appear as benevolent guardians, but they're also key actors in a system of global governance, surveillance, and monetization. And for the kids, well, we know how Harry and Meghan feel about them. They end up completely enslaved and brainwashed to think it's normal. Let me go ahead and leave you with this final thought. Do you want evil people like Meghan Markle having access to influencing behaviors and thoughts of your children? I mean, do we want to see a generation of enslaved, godless, empty people to be the future? All the while the elite parasites profiting off of doing this to them? At the pace that AI is evolving, this is not something we have years to sit back on and watch to see what happens. It's happening now. So the only thing I can say is stay alert and not be distracted by the propaganda and PR stunts Harry and Meghan continue to pull. It's not on accident. But what do you guys think? Definitely leave your thoughts below. And as always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Such a fraud.